Very good morning. If you've just tuned in, welcome. Yes, we're having one of the latest in the series of New Age business briefings brought to you by the SABC, and today very kindly sponsored by Transnet. And the subject matter is something that affects us all, or potentially. And if you're not careful, you may have been unwittingly caught up in scams that are taking place at the moment. So there are a number of them happening at different layers. And we've got some state-owned enterprises that are here today to kind of share their experiences with us of how people are using their companies to scam companies and individuals. You're going to hear terms like phishing, smishing, and you want to find out what those are, because every day that you switch on your phone or you check your email, and sometimes even get an unsolicited call, you have no idea who you're talking to on the other side and what kind of information you're giving away and how dangerous it is for you. So we're taking a look at those kinds of crimes, job scams, tender scams, and in the world that we live in now, particularly in the sort of electronic world, cybercrime has become huge. I was just looking at statistics the other day. It's very difficult to quantify because a lot of it is unreported, but globally, cybercrimes hit the $400 billion mark now. And so because of its nature, you could be scammed from a remote location in another part of the world. So you need to pay attention to the conversation that we're going to be having today. And if you have any questions, comments, hashtag TNA BizBrief, that's B-I-Z, hashtag TNA BizBrief, or at Morning Live SABC, and we'll pick up those questions and put them through to our panel, who we're going to meet now. As we say, good morning and welcome to the General Manager, Corporate and Public Affairs at Transnet, Mr. Molatwane Likhethe. Thank you very much for joining us. Welcome to you. Good to be here, and good morning. Next to you, we have Major General Alfred Khana, who's head of corporate crime, hey? Commercial crime at the Directorate for Priority Crime Investigations, otherwise known to you and I as the Hawks. Thank you very much for joining us. Welcome to you.
Good morning.
Next to you is the Group Chief Supply Chain Officer at Transnet, Mr. Edward Thomas. Thank you for joining us. Welcome to you.
Thank you very much. Morning.
And the Head of Audit, Chief Audit Executive at Eskom, Mr. Molefi Nkhabu. Thank you very much for joining us and welcome to you.
Thank you, Mr. Ndoro.
All right. Okay, so we have a lot to cover, a lot to talk about. But let me start with you, Molatwane, because you were quite keen for us to have this conversation. Just give us a little bit of background as to why we needed to be talking about this.
Thank you very much, Peter. Yes, I am from Transnet. It's a state-owned company. We are responsible for moving freight for exports as well as imports. We operate throughout the country, corner to corner of South Africa, even beyond the borders of this country. Yes, we thought it would be very critical of us to start talking about these scams that we are experiencing. Businesses of our size, businesses of our nature, we are so prone and vulnerable to people who are sitting out there who are involved most of the time in criminal activities. These people have even made it a profession. So the two scams that really are haunting us as a business and many other state-owned companies and those that do not necessarily belong to government is that of job. We're having job scams as well as tender scams. If I may, I am with my colleague, Edward Thomas, who will talk mainly on the procurement side, and I'll focus for now on the job scams. We're having lots of South Africans who are vulnerable, who want to work. They're desperate. And yes, the cyber crime has become a problem now, particularly through phishing as well as smishing. Phishing, which mainly has to do with the use of electronics like your laptop, your computer. These are the people that can easily send you an email saying that, hey, using Transnet's logo saying, we have a job here. If you want to apply, these are the details. They'll provide you the details, even using the logo of Transnet. And sometimes they don't use only computers and laptops. They'll also go for smishing, which is about using the technology that many of us use, the cell phones. You will receive a text saying, we are Transnet with a logo. saying that we have the following vacancies. If you want to apply, you may do so. They'll provide you with all the details. And because you are vulnerable, you need employment, you are likely to take advantage of that. You may even start calling them because they'll also provide you the telephone numbers. But generally, those telephone numbers that they provide are not legitimate. It's one of those one-night kind of telephone. You'll start talking to them. Some, they're very patient. They will talk to you for a period of a week, sometimes even a month, until they have your full buy-in. After all, you start realizing that maybe this is Transnet. Then they will come and say, we have this particular job, but for us to help you or to consider you, there is a fee that you have to pay. Sometimes 1,000, 1,500, 200, it varies. I think based on how they assess or feel you over the phone. Then you'll be requested to make that payment. Once you've made the payment, that's where your nightmare starts. They disappear. And that's when many of our citizens of South Africans wake up and realize that, by the way, I thought I was talking to Transnet, because they'll be using also the names of the senior executives of the company, me and many other colleagues of mine. And once you have made the deposit, when you call them, they're nowhere to be found. And that's when these guys start calling us now and saying, I've made a payment to a person called Eddie Thomas. And we know who Eddie Thomas in the company, but we're sure that this is not the person that can really go out there and really scam people for 1,500 rand. But Oksala, they have paid the money. On the other side, they will also come and say, hey, please, this particular job that we advertising pays so much. And then a person falls for it. You realize that maybe they say per annum is about 15, 20, or 10,000, whatever the case might be. Then you think that you have what it takes. You start applying. But as soon as you make the payment, that's where these guys start vanishing. So the three key points that I would like to bring to the attention of South Africans is that please note that as Transnet, we do not at all advertise our positions through the social media. No cell phones, no Facebooks, no Twitters, etc. Two, under no circumstances shall Transnet ask for any fee for any job that they are advertising. So once you start seeing that, you must get worried that there is definitely something going wrong. So never fall for that one. No salaries, no fee to be paid. We don't use social media. Then just to top it up, if you're really looking for employment at Transnet, we use only two vehicles, and two only. We use newspapers, because we know newspapers have a wider reach. We use a particular newspaper for a particular position that we have, or positions in a particular area. Two, we also make sure as Transnet, we advertise through our website. So for you to access that, you have to go to www.transnet.net. That is the website that you have to visit. Once you go there, you will be given a code that you're going to use. Then it will give you access to whatever positions that Transnet has. So make sure that you stick to those two. Don't fall for other traps that people are coming up with.
We will explore a lot of that in greater detail and the kind of due diligence that you need to do. Major General, with your permission, I'm going to come to you last, because you see the global picture. A lot of these institutions see what happens to them. So let me go to you, Mr. Thomas. I guess you're in the procurement area. You deal with a lot of tender scams that you see. Typically, what kind of issues are falling on your desk?
So what we've been finding, and it actually goes through various spates and cycles during the course of the year, we are finding that there's a lot of scams around requests for quotations. Because effectively, generally our tenders are public, and they are published on the National Treasury's e-tender portal, where anyone in the public can get access to the documents and then be able to respond to our tenders. Now, those basically are for transactions that Transnet wants to do above the value of 2 million rand. Where Transnet uses quotes is for transactions below 2 million rand. And in general, Transnet would then request suppliers to respond via email. But now what we're finding is happening is these criminals are identifying basically a commodity that they would like to acquire, something of value, something that they might be able to easily move. And then what they would do is they identify a list of suppliers of these products. So this is not necessarily targeting an individual. They target a range of companies in an industry. And what they do is they create an email that looks a lot like a very official tender documentation from Transnet, using our logos, using email addresses that look like Transnet email addresses. And that's where these guys are also very technologically savvy. The email addresses, they embed their own email address behind an official Transnet email. And then they request quotations for these goods, and then they start engaging with the people. And but what you find is, in the way that they're engaging with the suppliers, is that they send the request for quotations from, it seems to be board members or the chairperson of the board or very senior executives in our organization. As they carry on with the engagement, they sometimes even send documentation identifying these individuals. And then what we find is...
So an ID book, for example.
Copies of ID books.
Wow.
That they actually send this information through to the supplier to say, you know, we are a valid person from Transnet. And then also what we find is the way Transnet actually gets to hear about these things and gets visibility of this is where the supplier actually replies to an email, but he types in the return email address. When they physically type in the email address, it actually comes to the Transnet person.
Okay.
If they click on the email, in the email, it seems to be coming to the Transnet person, but embedded in the email address, it comes to them.
Okay, all right.
They
so
also
just
then
to clear that up so that people understand. So when you get an email from someone, there are two ways to reply. One, you click on the name of the person. It opens up a page in your in your email browser with the address typed in, and then you write back.
That's correct.
If you click, what you're saying is that what you're seeing isn't necessarily that real address that's sitting underneath. So that if you want to be careful, rather type out the name instead of clicking, type the name, because then it'll go to the real person. That's what you're saying.
Yes,
okay.
That's correct. And we also find that when they want to take delivery of the goods, they sometimes insist that they will come and collect, or they will insist on a certain specific address. And often it is not an official Transnet premises with Transnet branding on, etc. But unfortunately, our companies and our suppliers are being defrauded through these scams.
Okay.
But they need to be vigilant.
Right.
Transnet will never have one of our board of directors request someone for a quotation, nor any senior official.
Or send an ID book.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Correct.
All right. Eskom, I guess you're looking at similar issues as well. What sort of things are coming at your desk?
Mr. Ndoro, you are absolutely right. I was just thinking now that I might just be repeating what you said. But maybe let me add on top. What they normally do in terms of recruitment, the scammers will actually scam the employee and then tell him we've got a power station, Midupi or Kusile,
yes,
whatever power station. On their way there, then they say, you need to be paying money into this account or PEP store, whatever they use, because you're going to need that as entry. You need to keep that receipt.
Oh.
As you enter the gate, then you need that as an entry point.
My goodness.
Only at that point, when they come to the gate, we say, but we don't work this way. And I'm saying this is bad news. I just want to say to the public that this is really bad news for you. As soon as somebody says you pay for the job or you pay for the tender, we don't work that way.
So the moment you ask for any kind of money, that's usually a sign for you to be more vigilant and to really check things out.
Yes.
So commercial crimes at Hawks, you're seeing a global picture, not just these two entities, but a lot of companies and a lot of individuals. Give us a sense of, how these kinds of crimes are increasing and the nature of this beast.
Thanks, Mr. Ndoro. Yeah. For starters, as commercial crime, we rather look at white-collar crime in totality. Now, under white-collar crime, you speak about fraud. And fraud is manifested in various ways. I'm just going to touch on the more prevalent ones that touches us more. You have the investment type of fraud, where people are duped into, and the sad part about investment type of fraud, you have pensioners who just go off on pension, and then they are duped into taking a major, if not all, of their life savings and putting it into an investment scam, right, where they are being promised higher returns than what major banks could offer.
These are these Ponzi type schemes.
Yes.
Right.
And then the other, you have these banking scams. Now, we have spoken to, and some of the panel members have touched on certain levels of identity fraud. Because what they speak about, this ID stuff, it touches on identity fraud. And where it is most prevalent is in your banking sector crime, where you have people who have account takeovers, where people have gone into people's accounts, taken siphoned money out of the accounts. The other areas is what they have touched on. What we speak about is, we classified it as government tender fraud, where people pose as representatives of certain government departments, be it municipal entities or state-owned entities. And they dupe people into coming to buy tenders, enter into quotations, and they are being offered certain things, where they act to their detriment by supplying these items. And just to touch on the other area that we spoke about was, so if you have the issues of the job tender fraud, the job fraud, and the unsaid and sad part of it is that is the most vulnerable of people who are being affected here. It's because it's those people, and especially these youngsters, who are being duped into, they are unemployed. We don't want them to enter into the area of crime. So they go for the jobs. Just we found that the hard and few monies that they borrowed now is also went to criminals and fraudsters, because they thought they are really going into a job now, only to find that they were scammed. Okay,
all right. So we're going to explore a lot of these little tricks and a lot of these, and also what we need to do to be vigilant and to check out. I mean, the first sign straight away is, if you're asked for a payment, you've got to be much more alert than ever before. But also, when they ask you for information, in fact, strangely, it happened to me just yesterday. Google asked me to rate their service. I rated it, and then they said, you have won a free psychic reading with Alicia, the psychic. So just for fun, I went in there, and she did this psychic reading in like 30 seconds. And then she says, for a fuller psychic reading, send me your email details, and then I can confirm, etc., etc. And that's when I knew there was a problem. I did a quick Google check, and Alicia is scamming people, and I don't even know where she sits. She's somewhere in the world. So if you ever hear of Alicia the psychic, run away. We'll be back after this break.